The Catholic Church held an abundant amount of power in the 16th century. That was until the Reformation came along and divided the nation due to the difference in theological beliefs. There were many. However, the one I will be discussing is the Lord's Supper. But before I dive into that, it's important to know about two key people, Martin Luther and Ulrich Zwingli. Martin Luther was born in November of 1483 in Eisleben, Germany. Although his father wanted him to study law, Luther found interest in a different topic, religion. Growing up, he admired Prince Wilhelm von Anhalt, who was a devout monk. When he was just 21, he almost died to a lightning bolt striking nearby. This scared him for what would come after death, so he also became a monk. His supervisor there allowed him biblical freedom, and up until 2 years after he published the 95 Theses, he was Catholic. However, he began to see Christianity in a new light in an encounter known as the Tower Experience, where he read Romans 1:17. There, he discovered that God is a kind and generous God who gives sinners the gift of his own righteousness. He disagreed with many Catholic traditions, but again, the one I'll be talking more about is the Lord's Supper. So Ulrich Zwingli was a Swiss reformer born in 1484 on New Year's in Wildhaus, a village in Switzerland. He was convinced that there was need of a reform regarding the church, so he studied Erasmus's Greek translation of the New Testament. He realized that Christians should believe in and practice scripture rather than human traditions. This was also a controversial theological idea at the time. There are three different beliefs revolving around the Lord's Supper: the Catholic belief, Luther's belief, and Zwingli's belief. The disagreement was over the Bible passage Matthew 26 verses 26 through 28, which says, "Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body.' And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, 'Drink of it, all of you, for this is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins.'" Now, Catholics interpret the bread and wine as Jesus' actual body and blood, which is known as transubstantiation. Luther challenged that belief by claiming the Lord's Supper as the true body and blood under the bread and wine, which basically means the body and blood of Christ are added to the presence of the bread and wine. This belief, which is known as consubstantiation, can be found in the sacrament of the altar. Now, Zwingli interpreted this passage as Jesus simply saying, "This signifies my body," and we know this belief as symbolism. Luther and Zwingli's differences in beliefs were brought to attention in October of 1529. It was a theological debate known as the Marburg Colloquy. Martin Bucer, who later on became a political reformer, and Philip of Hesse sought unity among Christians, so Philip of Hesse offered up his castle for this debate. The sides were Zwingli and Oecolampadius against Luther and Wittenberg theologians. They discussed 14 points, which they were all able to agree on, except for the last one, which was the Lord's Supper. Luther and Zwingli agreed in the understanding of the text, even though their words were different, but they still refused each other's beliefs and denounced one another as heretics. Needless to say, this topic was left unresolved. Today, we are still able to see the effects from these reformers in motion.